Hi, Mike Keller here. I was going to give you a quick overview of the new 5.8 release for Planmeca here. Some really interesting additions and some very helpful changes I think you're going to see with version 5.8. First thing you're going to notice in the setup screen, there have been some changes here. The one you'll notice right away, there's a full arch button here as a restoration type. Obviously, it's not a restoration. This is a way to scan full arches and actually use a bilateral buckle bite to help align those precisely, so you can export those out to the laboratory for things like night guards or potentially for orthodontic retainers. So a nice addition to the software here. The other thing you'll notice is the organization of the materials has changed, and some of the materials themselves have changed. You'll notice that the very top material choice is Emax now. It's been pushed up to the top. You also will see there are some new materials. The GC Ceras Smart, some of the Vita materials have all been added into the software now. So these are all available through Shine. You can get these different blocks, and there's some pluses and minuses to all of them, and something definitely you want to do some research into. But now we have a few more choices as well. The other thing you're going to notice is there's now a translucency tab. So instead of selecting the translucency and the material type in one tab and having a very long list, now we've got an additional tab to select translucency. It actually makes it much faster to select materials, and you'll notice that we have, this is an Emax selection, an LT, an MT, and an HT. For those who haven't started working with the MT Emax, something you definitely want to check out. It's a very, very good material, nice happy medium between the LT and the HT. I've been finding the restorations coming out beautiful with that, and the shade is the same as it was before. Come over to the scan page. A few little differences here as well with the bite alignment. If you open up the bite alignment, first thing you're going to notice here is that when you rotate the model, you're going to get this heat map look to the bite, so you can actually see that things have aligned and what the contact strength is between the arches. And alignments have been pretty good with this, but again, it's a similar kind of thing to what we had before in the previous version, where you're going to bring the be able to reset and manually line the bite up in the same way, and you can rotate the models as needed if you have something out of whack and you need to bring that into position. So that's a very nice feature. One thing to be a little cautious of. When you first align the models, you can inadvertently, if you're right-clicking and holding on the mouse, you can kind of pull this model out. It's a way to kind of tweak the position a touch. But if you're trying to spin the model, like we often want to do to look at the top of it, be real careful that you're not actually on the model holding it, because you'll just spin it out of alignment and you'll drive yourself crazy. So that's something to be a little careful with. But overall, that's a real nice change to the alignment. Nothing really has changed in here on the margin tab, aside from the fact that you will notice the models have sharpened up just a little bit, really getting some nice crisp models in version 5.8. The big change in 5.8 is this, from my opinion, is this plan tab. When we look at this plan tab, this is back a while ago, what I was teaching people in order to get a good proposal out of the software was to in the margin tab to go ahead and orient the green ghost tooth onto the model, making sure that everything lined up properly, and then in design to use the alt and the arrows to change the size of the proposal and move it into position. Well, the plan tab kind of takes and gets rid of all that craziness. So with the plan tab, if you can actually do all those things, and it's much easier. So you've got 3 buttons down here. You've got rotate, resize, and move. So this is obviously in a nice position, but you could, we're going to get rid of that design. We can resize by just left-clicking, holding, and moving, and that'll allow that restoration to get bigger or smaller. So this is kind of in the replace of the alt arrows that we would have used in the design screen. We can also move this restoration wherever we want to, and one really cool thing is we can now rotate this restoration. So before, we had to be super careful about getting orientation exactly right, otherwise our proposals would be in the wrong spot. You don't have to be so careful with that anymore. So you can use these buttons to get things moved into the right spot, get this proposal in a good position and a good size relative to the adjacent teeth, and it will make the proposals come in a whole heck of a lot better. So the idea here is just to kind of get this rotated. Now, usually if you're not going to be too far off a base if your first scan was relatively close to dead on to the top of the tooth, but this will allow you to kind of tweak things. and get things in the right position. You can also now bring the bite in, same thing, 2 clicks gets it translucent, and you can kind of see where that bite's a little bit heavy. So maybe if that proposal is very tall, you can come back over to the move and you can kind of scooch it down a little bit. The idea here, again, just like we were doing before, is to give AutoGenesis a jump start. So now we go back over to the Design tab. We get very, very nice proposals popping out of the software. I mean, this is, very little adjustment that I'm going to have to do to that kind of proposal. So a really nice addition to the software that helps out a lot for a single. I'm also going to show you how this makes a big, big difference with a multiple restoration case as well. Okay, now for something a little more complicated here. This is a 3-unit bridge case, and this actually was scanned in a previous version of the software, so this you can see the differences in the models here. So this is a bridge case. Again, this is a 3-unit posterior bridge, which is not recommended by Avoclar or E4D, but your mileage may vary on this. But just for an example, so I've marked the margins, and one little hint with bridge design while we're on the subject of multiple units. The Pontic, if we want to get a good proposal for the Pontic, we want to, even though this is maybe a little bit of an oversized for what you'd want for the Pontic form to look like, if you start out with a Pontic margin similar to the size of say the bicuspid margin here, it's going to allow the proposal to come in a little bit closer to what you're looking for. There won't be a mismatch of the size of the library tooth to the margin, so you get less twisting and mess in at the gingival margin on it. And you can always come back in the design screen and you can move this margin in order to kind of narrow that down if you want more of an ovate bullet Pontic or whatever the design you want. If you don't want so much of a ridge lap here, but if you want to start out here, it will help in the design process, and you can always nudge it back as you go. So now here we get into the plan tab. One of my pet peeves with the software for a very long time has been if we were to do it the old way, where we use the alt and the arrows and move things into position, if we had a multiple unit case and we placed one of the restorations and went to go design the next restoration, you'd lose the green version of the one you just placed and lose all your reference points. So it made it very difficult to kind of line up the restorations. That's all gone now. With this plan tab, we now have the luxury of having those restorations all stay in place. So we're going to use the same kind of method I used with the single unit case. Is we're going to just go ahead and we can resize this. And again, with multiple units, you can see you'll have the teeth numbers down here, so you can click and activate whichever restoration you want to work on at that time. And we can kind of resize that. We can rotate. We can move and kind of get everything in the position that we want it to be in. Now, typically what I'm looking to do here is to get things in line and line these marginal ridges up pretty close here. So that's the way I kind of go about design. You can see how that, when we're talking about with the margin, see how that margin is pretty close to what that library tooth is, so that when the AutoGenesis goes to stretch down to the margin, it's not going to have to go do as much moving, and you'll end up with this shape of this proposal will stay a little more consistent. And again, we can drop the bite registration in and take a look, and if we want to move that up a little bit more, we can get that in better position. We can go back and we can modify any of these other proposals if we want to move those into different positions or rotate them or whatever the case may be. And we can then go over to our design screen and we go ahead and put all our restorations in, and we'll find that we get a much better bridge proposal because we've gone through and gotten everything lined up a little more appropriately. So it saves us a lot of time and effort in our design, and that's what we're looking to do. We're trying to get more efficient and making sure that this is as fast a process as possible with as little trouble. So you can see there, we're off to a pretty good start there. There's definitely some changes we'll need to make to it, broaden out the contacts and such, but that's a heck of a lot better than where we would have started in the old days before we had the software changes. So I think you'll find for multiple units, this plan tab is an extremely helpful addition to have in the software. So go out there. I'm sure most have already kind of downloaded the software by now. If you haven't, get on with SOS and they'll be glad to kind of get you in the queue to install the 5.8. And I think you're going to find this helps an awful lot. It's a very good release, has an awful lot of nice new features with it that'll help you with your designs, getting more efficient and getting a little more quick and getting those cases done. All right, thank you. Hope you enjoyed this.